The exercises that you connect with, you need to focus on those exercises more because, and especially when it comes to back, because you
Mhm.
need to be tuned in that much more to that feel and feeling those muscles move because you can't see them. Here between two dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. But today, critical physique assessment. Of course, you can send in your pictures, you can send in your training information. We'll rip you apart, tell you what your weakest body part is, and we'll essentially program your training to bring up that weakness. It's free training. Use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% and not just Team Skip protein, but every protein. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys use it because it's that good. Critical physique assessment. Who's on the chopping block today? I'm in the mood to wreck this guy. I don't even know
Ooh.
him. I don't know if I like him. I don't know if I don't like him. Mark Warren.
Yes. Overall, decent. Well done. So he's been training 11 years. He has been doing a lot of mountain dog stuff, it sounded like. So he's familiar with training to failure. He's doing a program with Chris Edmonds. And he did the whole RP, RIR stuff last year, it looks like. And what he said is his weakness, I agree with, I think is back. He also mentioned shoulders and arms, but I think back stands out a little bit more to me. And I would even say just posterior chain, like back and hamstrings, I think would make a pretty awesome visual change for him. Again, though, very respectable development. Obviously, he knows how to his way around the kitchen. So, like, kudos for conditioning and all that. I don't know if this is like how he is year round. Is he dieting right
Right.
now? Whatever, right? But he's pretty damn tight. So, well done. Jealous of his pecs, that's for damn sure. But I think back would be the biggest visual change, and then I would just lump in hamstrings with there. What's funny is I actually literally wrote out a back specialization workout on the plane to New Jersey a couple weeks ago. So I was like, oh, perfect. I could just pull that up because I have not had time to. Well, I'm starting Saturday. I get to go back to the gym, everybody. Very excited. And then once I'm back to like able to push, I will run through the program because writing it on paper is different than actually doing it. But I will essentially be telling him what I would do for that program. But that's what I focused on is, yes, he said shoulders and arms, but like we talked about, unless you're choosing smaller muscles, like you could do shoulders and arms together as a specialization, but I wouldn't do back and arms or back and shoulders. That's just too much. And
Yeah.
that's too many different like movement patterns where, we're going to do some RDLs. That's going to get low back erectors, right? Which will help them, and it'll get glutes and hammies. So that kind of lends itself, right? Versus three totally different movement patterns. I think that gets a little bit too hard to manage, especially fatigue, warming up, sessions lasting forever, blah, blah, blah. What do you think?
I'm looking all over my screen because I got the pictures on the left, pictures on the right. Obviously, they're positioned better for the for the viewers than what we're looking at.
Yeah.
With his information in the middle. Okay, so as far as conditioning, I don't know, like you said, I don't know if he's one of these guys who, can get away with eating crappy and he just has a good metabolism. Sometimes people just have that where they get away with it a little bit. I don't, so I can't relate. But you're right. Condition is good. And here's the thing: it's not even just the condition, but he does also have what is important to the sport if he, is going to compete is balanced storage of body fat. And just I want to touch on this real quick because this is a component that is sometimes overlooked when we talk about genetics. Okay, so when we talk about genetics, people tend to think, oh, he's got good genetics. He was muscular to begin with, or he's a classic, mesomorph in the sense that he already kind of had round muscles, and you can kind of see, what he's going to look like when he's huge. That's one component of so many different variables that go into someone's genetic potential. Example, the assimilation of nutrients. Look, there's not a pro out there who doesn't have also pro assimilation of nutrients.
Mhm.
There's not a pro out there who doesn't also have the ability to not assimilate, but their body to adapt or to use a
Lower
specific,
calories.
right, or even hormones for that
Yeah.
matter. So, people tend to think, oh, he's huge. He takes a lot of, supplements and gear. And so that's not necessarily the case. What I have found in my experience is there are a lot of pros who respond this much to additional hormone therapy, if you will. So, and yet on the surface, it seems surprising, but it's really not, because that's part of that genetic makeup too. So another component of the genetic makeup is the nutritional part, not even the nutritional part, but the condition part of it, where most pros or most people at an advanced level when they compete don't get into shape and then go, oh, I still got to get my lower back into shape, like me. Or they're super conditioned from the front, but they turn around from the back, and then all of a sudden there's another 10 pounds that they need to lose for the back side, their posterior chain, to look the same or be in that same condition that they are from the front. Now, age plays a part in that as well, whether you're a pro or not. There are a lot of, it's nuanced. There's just a lot there. But looking at his physique, he might say, oh, yeah, my lower back is the last to come in. But it's not a situation where there is this huge disparity between one, like in one specific area, which takes me also to another genetic disposition, if you will, is there's not like nothing stands out as going being like, oh my gosh, his back is awful. So sometimes it's hard in situations like this when you assess a physique to not just say, you just need size everywhere. And it sounds like a cop out, and people don't want to hear that. So we're not going to do. He has weaknesses that he can bring up, but they're not glaring weaknesses. And they kind of go together if you think. Look at his balance alone. If you look at his back, okay, yes, his back needs to come up. Oh, so do the biceps. There's a connection there. If the back comes up, do the biceps come up? They probably do. So same with if his chest is weak, with all of his pressing movements that he would be doing to bring up a weaker chest, that's almost certainly going to relate or translate to more tricep size over that time as well. So then you're adding to arm size. But there is pretty good balance here. I see the potential, I'm not going to speak for you, but I see the potential for his physique, if he continues to progress, to do well on stage as a competitor, if that's his aspiration. So to pick out the weakness, you said you were going with the back.
Yeah, I think back would visually help him the most.
And here's the thing too, if you have a couple weaknesses, and I just touched on the arms, or let's say it's delts, which is another good example, because, or for this guy, is if you're going to add muscle to your back or to your chest, you're almost certainly going to be hitting the delts harder and adding size to the delts too. So when in doubt, if you just feel like, okay, I have to come up with my weaknesses, I have to define my weaknesses for my upper body, but I'm not real sure, just default to chest and back. Because if you bring those up, shoulders and arms almost always come up as well. Will they come up to the level that they're no longer a weakness? Maybe, maybe not. But they will come up. They tend to progress very well when you're focused on back and chest. But I'm going to agree with you with back. And shape is great too, which is another genetic component, because you can have size and you can not wear it well. Or you can add size and you arguably might have looked good 10 pounds lighter. And when I say lighter, not necessarily condition, but sometimes even just less muscle. It just takes a long time to get to that point before you get to say, I don't look as good with this extra muscle.
Yeah. And what a horrible problem to have.
Yeah, it's really,
Now
it's
you
really,
can see on his double back though, like I would see chiropractically, he's got to get his left scalenes, his left levator, his left trap, and his left subscap to relax, and that'll balance out his posing a lot more. So if he was coming into the office, I would be doing some tissue work, getting that rib cage moving a little bit better. So there would be some things you could do from my day job that would improve his posing. But overall, though, his posing's respectable. He presents his physique well. He said, yeah, I feel like everything needs to grow, which we both agree, but I don't like that as an answer.
where are
Right.
you seeing that left? I see it in the front double bicep, not as much in the back double bi. Is that where you're seeing it?
So I just have the back double bi on my page, and you can see how the left shoulder slightly elevated, like the trap region. It's not flared out as much. So his subscap is bound up on the left, which is causing issues with the levator and the trap.
Well, you have a trained eye. Well, correct. I guess I have a trained eye from a posing standpoint too, but I think
I look at it a little differently with what I do though, because then because I'm already like, well, I would do X, Y, and Z to help his posing, which would help him in the gym as well. So yeah,
right. Well, and I think because your trained eye is different than my trained eye in the sense that you're looking for far more minor fluctuations, where I'm looking at it going, okay, total package.
I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated.
Like I'm not looking, oh, okay, this that's what you're looking for. Now, some people might argue, well, Skip is a judge. You've judged in the past. Well, judges do that. They really don't, because we accept some level of asymmetry.
Yeah.
Because that's just, we talk about symmetry all the time. But the truth is when we talk about symmetry in the sport, primarily in competitive bodybuilding and judging a physique, the term is usually used for prettiness, not true symmetry. Symmetry by definition is, does the one look like the other or identical, I guess.
And it does not.
Right.
It never will. It never will. Right. His quads are asymmetrical. Everybody's quads are, right? Yep. You just try to limit it and present it, and it's normal, but just giving them some gems of, hey, I would look into having somebody work on those areas, and I think it'll help unlock the left shoulder and help with posing and help with training too. Just a bonus.
Quick little side note, and I'll be very, very quick with this, but when I was a teenager, I started training when I was about 14, and I just went OCD with it, like very dysfunctional. I didn't care about anything else. I would sit in class. In fact, I chose my high school classes based on which teachers would pass me with a D if I sat, and I'm not kidding when I say this. It's almost embarrassing to say this. But it's my younger self, so it is what it is. But I would then sit in the back of the class and I would read muscle magazines. Never mind that I have read that article
100 times.
Right. Or it's falling apart because I haven't gotten the new issue in the mail yet.
Yeah.
But that's really all I cared about. So I'm in the gym one night, Y Center, Battle Creek, Michigan, and it closes at 9:00. So all the lights go off, and I'm sitting there on the bench, and I am crying because my left pec doesn't have the same cut as my right pec. I have a little bit more pec minor showing on the right side than the left side. And I was convinced, and I want to say I was 15 at the time. So it had only been like a year or two that I've been training. But I felt at that point that I had invested so much, and I had the realization in front of me that I'm never going to be Mr. Olympia because my left pec doesn't look like my right pec. And I was absolutely devastated. So there's my full transparency. And to this day, I notice it, but I obviously know that there are many other reasons that I'm not Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
And it's not about that concern that I had when I was 15 years old, but I was devastated by that.
Yeah.
I'll get trolled for that, I'm pretty sure.
No, wow. I appreciate the honesty.
Get trolled
and again,
for everything.
and I'm not like trying to throw them under the bus or roast them, just saying, hey, these things could be super beneficial. That's what people come to me for.
Yep.
right? So, yeah. So I know you don't like giving exercises specifically, but I'm going to challenge you to give them some options per category of movement.
Yeah.
Since I typically go first, do you want to go first, and then I'll?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I'll go
One of the things that I am big on, even though I don't specifically say, "Hey," to a client or to anyone else, is I won't say, "Hey, do this specific exercise." But what I will say is this: what stands out right away is if we're bringing up the back, I am much bigger on rowing movements than I am like pull down type movements, unless the overall back, or maybe like the upper back, is, predominantly thicker, like almost obviously better and thicker, but the lats are not terribly well developed. And that's easy to do when people pull a lot of deads. They're heavy barbell rowers, that type of thing, and they're focused more on not just the heavy pulling, but even the numbers. Then we want to try to move into trying to isolate, which is very difficult. The more size you get through the upper back, the more difficult it is to isolate the lats, because all the stronger muscles want to take over, even in an exercise or during an exercise that is lat dominant. So I'm going to say my go-to right away is, we got to get this cat rowing. So, and he's a high volume guy. I don't want to dip into the volume, I guess, yet. I'll wait on that. So as far as exercises, let's say we're doing 4 exercises for a workout for back. I'm going to want 3 of those. I say at least 3 to be rowing movements with the one lat, I say dominant, lat pull, chin, some variation of that. But maybe every other week, all it is rowing. You just can't go wrong with rowing movements. And some people will say, well, that's not a width builder. It's just a muscle builder. It's a back builder. So until you get to the point where you realize, okay, maybe my upper back is a little bit more dominant than my lats, you're not going to like wake up one morning and go, well, my upper back is too big. Now I can't hit my lats. I mean, that's just not something that's going to happen. In fact, when people realize that their lats are weaker and their upper back is so strong, we're talking not months, but typically years of deadlifting, barbell rowing, and focusing more on the numbers that are being moved versus what those muscles feel like. And this needs to be said. Back training is arguably the most misunderstood training for any body part that anybody's going to train in the gym. It's so complex, and we don't see the muscles moving while we're doing it. You can sit in front of a mirror when you're doing a chest press, a hammer chest press, and you can see everything moving. You can't do that when you're training back. So we have to rely far more on that feel and and at the end of the day, I mean, you can make a lat pull down an upper back or mid back movement if you change the mechanics. So if that's where you feel, as an example, a lat pull down, you got to check the mechanics, because that's not where you should be feeling that movement. Rows, you can row where it's more lat dominant. You can row where it's more upper back dominant, and we can get into that in a minute. But that's how I would come at the ratio of rowing exercises versus lat. Some good examples. Look, I'm a T-bar. I want that angle, or a barbell row kind of guy. I want that angle coming up and into where it's going to meet the mid back, or the best way to explain it is all the muscles around the shoulder blade. So barbell rows, T-bar rows, hammer. I mean, come on. These days, the machines are every bit as good as a lot of these free weight exercises. So I don't want to get just focused on free weight exercise. We got to balance that out. I've been talking for a while. You go ahead and take it. Let me know what you think. If there's parallels or not.
Yeah. Well, before that, how many days a week is he hitting back? What are you doing to his other body? Like, what's frequency looking like?
I'd like the frequency only at once a week, with the focus primarily just on the back, to see how that works and then adjust from there. And again, when it comes to those 3 things, the intensity, volume, and frequency, I like Well, I like them in that order. That's why I set them in that order.
Yeah.
So I would flex the intensity and adjust the intensity equalizer bar. Then I would go to the what I say, intensity, volume, frequency.
Volume,
So then to the volume equalizer. I don't want to screw myself up with the terms here.
Yep.
And then I would leave the frequency for the end, because if the intensity and the volume allows you to train that muscle group, this particular situation in the back, once a week, great. Maximize the recovery versus going to frequency first, and then all of a sudden you're training it too frequently because you prefer a higher intensity level, or you might prefer a slightly higher volume level. So that's that's how I go in that order: intensity, volume, frequency. So I'd go with once a week to start.
Okay. Yeah, and he mentioned he does a lot of supersets and rest pauses and going beyond failure stuff. So
yeah, I wanted to go there too, but go ahead. I didn't want to throw everything out at once. But
so as always, I have 2 rotations of 2 days because I'm big on rotating. So I would have a full body pull day and then an upper body pull day. And dialing in his intensity, I would recommend starting out with straight sets first. Let's see what his recovery is.
Can I stop you there just to ask a question to clarify?
Yeah.
Again, I always say I'm representative of the viewers because I sometimes I'm like, duh. So if I don't get it, they may not. You said full body pull versus
upper pull. So like a traditional back day. So full body pull means I'm going to have them be doing RDLs, hence full body pull.
Okay. All right.
Because I feel like,
I didn't want that to be like full, like you were saying full back or full. I just wasn't sure. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah. So I typically would have the first session when he's fresh, the full pull day, because that's going to be his most demanding back day, because he's going to be finishing with RDLs before hitting his arms lightly. And then it's a traditional, back rear delt day later in the week. So I'd want him hitting it twice. Everything else goes down to maintenance, right? So, that would be asking him, typically, what do you think is what you could get away with to maintain your legs, maintain your chest, right? Your biceps are going to grow from the extra volume from all the back stuff. So don't worry about that. Your rear delts should also come up specifically because I have, multiple rows that are rear delt dominant. I agree with you. 2 to 3 rows per 1 pull, I think, is the right ratio for most people. So we're around the same thing there. I'll just real quickly go over day 1 of the full pull. I would recommend starting him with some sort of pullover. I really like an incline bench. I would then want to follow it up with another high to low pull machine. Then he would be doing, I love seated cable rows, depends on what he thinks of them. Do a 1-arm Meadows row, so he's also getting rear delt activation there. Then he would do his RDLs, right? So I used to, when I did full pull programs in the past, I'd have RDLs first. I could RDL first and still have a very high intensity workout. Other people, it saps strength, and if he's going to be hitting back twice a week, I would rather be more conservative and finish his main, his heavy lifting with an RDL versus starting it out, because we don't know his recovery ability. And then that first day, I would do blood flow restriction cable curl, followed up with dumbbell hammer curls. Then the second rotation of the full pull, that would switch. He would do blood flow restriction, a hammer curl variation, and then a traditional bicep curl. So you're kind of alternating. And then, so that would be the first workout, right? So a pullover, another high to low pull, whatever he likes. A seated row, I like cable rows, 1-arm Meadows row, RDL, blood flow biceps, traditional, hammer, Super Bowl shuffle, rope hammer curls, whatever you want. So 1, 2, 3, 4 traditional back exercises plus RDLs plus 2 arm exercises, but the blood flow restriction kind of counts as a half. And I really like just doing that before your traditional movement, because your arms are so full of blood. Those hammer curls are going to be brutal at the end. And I really think a lot of people, I think forearms have kind of gone the way of calves, right? With all the machines. I think forearms have gotten way smaller in recent years. So I always like having direct forearm training. So that would be my first day with him.
Okay, let me play the other side. I'll play the devil's advocate here for a second. Okay, just so I understand a couple things. Number 1, why biceps on back day?
They're already getting blood in them. Let's just do just a tiny bit more stimulation.
Okay. Is it the main bicep workout of the, like, say, of the week?
I'm sprinkling in a little bit of biceps on both back days because all of his heavy pulling is really going to be hitting the majority of it.
Okay, fair enough. Because I'm looking at it going, and this is again where it comes back to we don't have to have the same avenue or the same path to get to the end result.
Correct.
I just look at a bicep following a back workout with bicep training, and I understand that it's done a lot. It's efficient in the sense that they're already warm, they're ready to go. But what I have found is typically when the biceps are weaker, it's difficult to improve in that area unless it's a recovery issue, because at least that way, when you train back and biceps together, you're getting a lot more time where you're not coming back and arguably overtraining the biceps again by giving them their own day. That I concede. But to bring them up, I'm like, I don't know. But again, I'm just pointing out one variable that we don't have parallels there. The other thing is the RDLs. Why? I mean,
I'm a huge fan of just the entire posterior chain, especially the low back erectors. I just think they just build a level of density. And I think, when you look at his legs are respectable, but hamstrings he's got respectable calves, his quads, he's got some shape. So I think a hamstring would add that, but I like that type of hinging versus barbell rows. So I don't have him doing a traditional freestanding row. So that's his erector movement.
Okay, fair enough. So you're basically doing the RDLs. You're pulling away. I see it not strictly, because obviously the lower back has to be used, but as a hamstring movement. So you're saying that it's more. You're kind of, do you look at it more as a 50-50, like it's more balanced?
No, it's probably like 60 hamstring, 40 low back, maybe 65-35. But I think I just like that stimulus of getting hamstrings twice, because that's what he would need. So you're already just kind of building it in to still help his back, but you're getting, that's what he's missing in his legs.
Okay, so you missed, you didn't miss. You explained then my next question, which would have been because I was ready to go to, then why not train hamstrings after back versus biceps? But it sounds like you're saying that, again, you're getting a little bit of bicep work after back, you're getting a little bit of hamstring work after back, but those aren't your prime hamstring and prime bicep days.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Completely understand.
I like sprinkling it in. Yeah. Cause he would just, he wouldn't hip hinge on his leg day. He would do his hamstring curls on leg day. So he's hitting the upper and the lower hamstring. And I just really like that when, you're already fatigued from all your pulling, your back still got to work hard to stabilize, especially that upper back and trap. And I think it adds a layer of density that, again, we've talked about multiple times. I don't think deadlifting from the floor is great for bodybuilding. Is it great for your ego? Is it a basic movement pattern? Is it fun? Yes, but so many muscles are involved. It's not the best for pure hypertrophy. I think an RDL is vastly superior. And then we've talked about stiff-legged versus RDLs, right? I call them RDLs. Some people call them stiff-leg deadlifts, right? You've shown your definition of both. I want a soft knee bend. But I figured, hey, if you get a little bit extra hamstring and back during this phase, spectacular.
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
Fair enough. I think too, you're going to go with more frequency, aren't you?
Yep. I always like twice a week and then lower down, and then you're playing, and that's the starting point. And then we'll see how he does. Right.
Yeah, but when you say twice a week, you are let's say, just because we're on the topic of hamstrings and biceps, because of me, that is one of the two that you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm getting a little bit, because my first impression was like, man, there's another, which is cool. There's another difference then that we're finding in the trade, because I hit a muscle group and I don't want to touch it again until it's time to train again. Where you're like, okay, we'll put a little bit of extra in here. We'll get a little bit of blood flow. We'll get the resistance, but it's not going to be the most challenging day. It's not going to be like that bicep focused day or hamstring focused day. So, okay. All right. I'm on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I just have got, because it's so different than what most people do, right? What's the best workout program? The one you're not currently doing.
Right.
And then, then you see how is he recovering? How is he doing it? But again, I would start with straight sets just to see how is he handling this. I would not do intensifiers day one.
Yeah,
That's just me.
I completely agreed.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to come back to that.
Okay.
You know what? Let's go with that now.
Okay.
With the increased frequency, with the increased frequency in your training workout, where it's increased intensity in mine, because I like to train close, very close, if not to failure. That is those things are going to limit recovery. So adding things like the I'm just not a big fan of those types of high intensity or intensifiers. And we talked about that a lot we discussed this and debated this in the other video where intensifiers were the topic.
Yep.
But we may see them differently. Remember, I train close to failure. So when I do a drop set or something to that, I have already taken the first set to failure. This isn't like I did 10 reps and then I dropped the weight. I'm going 10 reps as an arbitrary number that I barely got 10 and would not have gotten 11. And then I'm dropping.
Okay.
And I'm doing that with the drop in weight too, or the drop set. So now I've arguably added or combined 2 failure sets into one, which I think we can all agree might as well be 3, when you move them that close together. So now the intensity has not just gone up a little bit, but it's gone up dramatically. And then that, not taxation, but the taxable value, same thing, I guess, on the system is crazy. That's only one set for one muscle group. So clearly, this would explain why I can't get away with it when I say I also don't have great recovery ability with or without cycling.
Yeah, and everybody's going to be different. I think when we talked about the intensifiers episode, I think drop sets are grossly overrated, but you like them you like them more than I do. I rarely do them.
Oh, I rarely will do them too,
I love
though.
my cluster sets. Like, that's my jam. And I love rep tempo. And then, but yeah, like, there's a reason why the arm on that day is mainly blood flow restriction and then just some hammer stuff.
Fair enough.
I just find that little bit of volume, it's more sarcoplasmic. It's also going to keep his elbows happy because remember, blood flow restriction helps soft tissue. So that's the second benefit because he's going to be pulling. Typically, pulling is easier on your elbows than pressing twice a week, right? So we all would agree with that. But if you could build in some soft tissue help along the way, I'm a huge fan. That's where my brain goes. And then if you've never done blood flow restriction and then another arm movement right after, your arms are so full of blood, like you could just raise your hand and it'll almost cramp. It's awesome. So, and then you're activating motor unit recruitment. So it's a way to make that, the hammer set really intense. On his second full pull, you would flip flop, you would blood flow restrict the forearm movement, then traditional bicep. So you're always flip flopping. Again, probably making it way too complicated, but I love the minutia and I love the different rotations through and all that. And again, 2 rotations for the 2 different days. So it's not the same movement pattern, not just from a progressive overload standpoint, but soft tissue joints, right? People just do way better if they're not doing the same movement every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday.
Are you doing a hammer type curl every bicep workout? Or
on his full pull, yes. On his upper day only, just bicep, just because I think you're going to get so much brachialis and brachioradialis with your rowing anyways. And the second day is primarily rowing, right? I like starting with a vertical pull. I feel like it just opens everything up. I think most people would agree, and then get to your heavy rowing stuff. That's how I typically do it. So, let me just run off the exercises for the second day real quick. Starting with a face pull. Again, I love them. Then a biomechanical real lat pull down where the elbow's by your side. Then a low row of his choice, a chest supported row. If he could recover, a one arm high to low pull, a reverse pec deck, and then a preacher curl. And then obviously you would kind of flip exercises out, but the same structure where it's primarily pulling focused. If he's doing well, maybe a unilateral movement at the end. And then one direct rear delt work, but he's going to be hitting rear delts because when you're doing, your chest supported rows, you're driving the elbows back to get that upper back. So you're already getting it. So I find just a little bit more direct is a great thing that'll help his physique as well.
Okay, so how many back exercises? You had the face pull.
Face pull, which is kind of back, it's rotator cuff, delts, upper back, a real lat pull down, a low row of choice, a chest supported row. Then only if he's recovering, then he could finish with one unilateral movement of his choice.
Okay.
Then one rear delt and one bicep direct.
Okay, give me an example of the low row so that the viewers have that example.
Yep, I really like one of the very few times I like an underhand grip is the DY row on hammer strength is freaking awesome. I think biomechanically and that it's angled, right? So you're not purely supinated, which we've talked about is dangerous on the biceps. That's why I don't like underhand barbell rows. Yes, biomechanically, that'll get more rear lat, but you have clients that have told us otherwise, right?
What is the DY?
I believe it stands for Dorian Yates, but that's what they call it, the DY row.
Now that you say Dorian Yates, I remember Yates as a Gen 1 Icarian row. So that was a neutral grip where the handles, I mean, we all, well, I say we all remember. The old heads remember that one the most because that's primarily what kind of helped to kick hammer strength popularity was Dorian doing that exercise and everybody else thinking, I got to have that exercise and I will have a Dorian back as well.
So it is the hammer strength isolateral DY row is indeed named after Dorian Yates.
Really?
The machine was developed in collaboration with Yates following a wrist injury that affected his training. To accommodate his needs, Hammer Strength founder designed a custom row machine featuring an underhand grip, overhead pivot, and a natural arc of motion that aligned with Yates biomechanics. I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
Badass.
Yeah, that's a real, not only a nice find, but a quick find. Because I would have seen a DY or a Dorian Yates reference with the Gen 1 regular handle.
Yeah.
But that clarifies it if he had an injury and then he had to go with the under grip.
Which aligns with what I said of why I like it so much, because it's so much easier on your wrist and so much less vulnerability on your bicep. It's really the only aggressive underhand grip row that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that. That's a difficult hammer strength.
It is. It's humbling, especially if you are I'm going to coach full stretch and then full contraction. You might only have 2 plates aside. Even 2 plates aside is going to be brutal if you're really keeping it on the lat and you're not letting the rest of the body take over. Kind of like what Austin was talking about, right? Stay on the muscle, stay on the muscle. I mean, there's times where, I'm only doing 1.5 plates aside, but good God, the contraction is just beautiful.
Okay, and an example then for the row that comes after that low row. Referred to as a high row.
Yeah, like a chest supported row, upper back focused, elbows wide. I love chest supported rows. I think they are the GOAT for upper back. Just because you could isolate it, you're not going to cheat and use your erectors. I'm not a big fan of bent over rows. We've talked about it, which a lot of people disagree. That's fine. And then I would also, here's how my brain works. Remember, he has 2 rotations. If he's doing the unilateral movement, the first rotation is a vertical pull. The second rotation is a horizontal pull if he's recovering.
Fair enough. All right. And I'm a fan of barbell rows and T-bar rows, primarily as finishers though.
Yep.
Correct. That way it's
so why don't you tell, in case somebody's new, because we talked about this a while ago, why do you like doing that?
Well, number one, it forces my elbows wider. There's that. And it's the angle that there's 2 types of barbell rows. There's the 1970s version that Arnold did. So we'll call them Arnold barbell rows, where his back was basically parallel to the floor or very, very close. Okay. He had when I say a deep stretch, he would typically stand on a bench so that the plates didn't hit the floor. That to me is wild now, because I look at it from, okay, I've been training for 41 years. My lower back is going to be like, yeah, I don't think so. And
Yep.
even if my back thinks so that day, it's a vulnerability and it's a risk that I'm not willing to take.
There's so much shearing force
Sure.
on the low back. And where I talked about your tiny little stabilizers. Sorry, Skip, I'm interrupting.
No, you're good. You're good.
Tiny little stabilizers that are paper thin. We don't have conscious control of those. Those have to relax as you're folding forward to allow your lumbar spine bones to spread enough for you to flex. So you're losing intrinsic internal stability. Yes, bracing properly. We do know if you activate the TVA, it most likely activates the multifidi, which is part of the muscles I'm talking about. But still, that just doesn't make sense to me. And then you add the shearing force because it's that 90-degree angle. Like, it's incredible that more guys didn't have catastrophic career-ending low back injuries, both with that and the crazy rocking seated cable row.
Yeah.
My spine pops out the back of my back every time I watch those two movements whenever I watch pumping iron.
Well, and I mean, if we go back to that time, I get it. Look, if all of a sudden, like, the masses are doing these two exercises one way, and then Arnold decides that he's going to do them a different way, he would have been ostracized, blackballed, made fun of, trolled for, the 70s version of trolling. It wouldn't have worked very well. And I think it's funny because that not only do we have the 70s version of the barbell row, but then we have the 90s version, which I give credit still. We got to give it to either Ronnie or Dorian. I'm not sure which. So that's where obviously there's more of a, I want to call it a 45, but sometimes it gets up even higher. Much less risk on the lower back, but can pull more weight as well. So, well, and there's a third actually, which is also important, is once you get up here to this angle and you're pulling gravity, because it's not a machine, that stress is up here versus here. So a lot more upper back development in between the shoulder blades and around the middle traps. And I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. There isn't a person alive that can't use more upper, middle, and size, just overall size in that area. You just can't go wrong with it. It ranks right up there with delts. I mean, can your delts really be too big?
Yep.
Your arms can be too big. Your legs can be too big.
Paul Dillette's the only one who comes to mind.
Right. And that arguably could be, to play the other side,
just bigger.
Maybe everything else wasn't just, he could have brought up other muscle groups. Hey, let's bring them up to the delts instead of bringing the delts back down to kind of measure everything out. Plus, he was ridiculously tall. So you have that long midsection.
Correct.
So, okay. So I understand your exercise. I'm on board with that. People typically know I don't set those exercises. You're challenging me to come up with the other exercises for the viewers, and I get that, and I'm totally cool with that. But even though I don't plan that second workout to say, okay, we did this for the first workout, you're going to do this for the second workout, I do always say I'm a variety guy. I don't like to repeat the same exercise. Well, you can repeat the same exercises if they're not in the same sequence. So even taking the same exercises, but flipping the sequence, I'm totally cool with. And it's not that you're breaking this cardinal team skip rule if you do the same exercises, because then you can fall back on progression. And let's just say this, those exercises you connect with, this is advice I always give, always have. The exercises that you connect with, you need to focus on those exercises more, because, and especially when it comes to back, because you need to be tuned in that much more to that feel and feeling those muscles move, because you can't see them. So if it comes down to, look, Skip, I only have 4 or 5 exercises that I really feel when I train back, I'm not going to talk somebody into doing a barbell row where it doesn't fit or it doesn't feel right, or a specific machine movement that doesn't feel right. The other thing is a lot of us train in gyms that are busy and we train at peak hours. So if I sit there and I say, hey, you have to do this one exercise, you could be sitting there for 20 minutes waiting for that exercise. So then I have to weigh out, is it worth the step back and potentially losing your pump and your even psychological momentum for that matter. Does anybody sit there and not get frustrated and pissed?
Yeah.
I mean, really. So how does that play into your workout versus
Especially
going to
when
another
the person is doing this?
Exactly. And so how does that weigh out, or how do we weigh that versus just doing a similar exercise that's going to hit the same area but is not the specific exercise that is programmed? So again, it's not right or wrong. This is where it's good that we're coming at it from two angles, because if someone was working with me, they're going to get something that is pretty specific to what I do. Working with you, same thing, specific to what you do. So we're kind of contrasting those two things. The viewer, or in this particular case, the physique assessment guy, can come away with two different opinions. Well, and advice is cool. I always told my kids this: you can take it or leave it. Like, it's up to you whether you listen to what I'm saying, weigh everything out and decide what you want to do. So he may take a little bit from what you said, a little bit from what I said, and put that together to fit what he needs.
I love what you said of, if you only feel a handful of movements, then that's what you ride till the wheels fall off, right? And then maybe what I would do is, hey, you're going to do the movements that you connect to. Let's try and do those first. You already have that good mind to muscle connection. Then let's try just one movement. And then let's do it a couple times in a row to see if you can't get a connection to it.
Oh, sure. And there's a big difference between, notice I didn't say exercises you like.
Yes.
Because exercises you like
not
can
an
turn
ego.
into,
Yes,
right.
they could be ego movements.
Or they're just easier. I mean, let's be fair. There are some people who just be like, I'm going to do leg extensions because I won't puke when I do them, or feel like I'm going to puke. That's not how I'm asking you to pick. I'm asking you to pick your exercises based on how they feel.
Love it.
There you go. Now your frequency is twice a week. I'm saying to start it once a week, but then you can adjust with the equalizers from there. You know, I'm a big fan of pullovers. I see pullovers as a finishing movement. I think they're great for opening up the shoulders. I think they're great for rotators. I think they're arguably better for I almost said it, for back width, not lat width. Big difference. And by that, I mean focused around the shoulder blade, because that's where we want most. If it comes out at the shoulder blade, fill it in. It's like pec size versus inner pec size. If you don't have inner pec size, get bigger pecs. You'll have inner pecs. You'll have bigger inner pec size. Same thing with the back. The more you build around the shoulders, the more that you're going to build into the lats coming out anyway. So size, at the end of the day, width, thickness, let's just call it size.
So you do pullovers towards the end? I
prefer them at the end. Yeah.
Just because of the stretch and the vulnerability of cold, or?
Vulnerability is in there, but I also look at it as kind of like a, going back to the DC programming of stretching the fascia, stretching the muscle when it has the most blood in there. It just all fits so well. And again, finishing, it limits. I like to put those riskier, more vulnerable exercises at the end to minimize that. It minimizes the load that you can put on it. So it versus coming out of the gates with, say, deadlifts is another example. Bodybuilding deadlifts, I think, should be at the end of a back workout. They should not be at the beginning. Not only for the risk of injury, but also because what we're doing is about development. It's not about moving a weight from point A to point B. So let's minimize that load at the end instead of exhausting everything. I mean, how much attention can you give to the intricacy or the nuanced development of the back, or the complexity of the back, when you're already buried coming out of deadlifts? It's very, very difficult. And I'm glad that a lot of other trainers have gone that route in the last 10, 12 years, because you go back 15 years and you did deads when you started your back training, which is another argument that we're not going to get into right now, but deads don't work the back. It's not a back exercise. Gee, please. Like, who is programming these for legs? I mean, come on. But anyway, that's a rabbit hole that we're gonna avoid today, I think. Rep ranges. Where are we for rep ranges?
Yeah, so he said he typically does higher for arms. So he said 8 to 20 for back and 15 to 20 on arms.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to that since he doesn't have any injuries. So it would really depend on the movement, right? Does it lend itself to heavier loading, right?
Mhm.
I wouldn't be doing 20 rep RDLs because that's just going to blast his nervous system way too much. So I go heavier RDLs, probably 8 to 12 for the most part. Maybe RDLs are 6 to 10. Arms, there's not a lot of direct arm training because I'm relying on the pulling. I'm not opposed to higher rep ranges. But again, straight sets for the most part, see how you recover, then go from there.
I'm against the higher reps that he's doing there because he's been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to mix things up,
Yeah.
If you're going to mix things up, number one that comes to mind with your programming is if he's going to do those bicep workouts after back,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to shoot for 15 to 20 on arms, the fatigue factor is going to be there. Sometimes we have a fatigue factor where you could do a 80-pound bicep curl and you could get 10 reps. Or you could drop down to 60 and still get only 10 reps. There is this kind of, I've come across this in my training. I've thought, okay, I only got 10 reps. I can't go up and wait from here. But I challenge myself to go, okay, keep the mechanics tight. Maybe it's just light and there's a level of fatigue that you're falling. And then I go up and I still get 10 reps and they're just as tight as the other set was. So I'd rather pull those reps down, especially as the not the program, but the workout program progresses.
Yep.
Because then you're lowering the risk of vulnerability. Sometimes I'll come down, I'll get underneath my ceiling of 10 and I'll come down to 8s if it's later in the muscle group, because then I know that risk is far less than if I was going to do, because remember, a lot of my training is to failure. So if I'm going to do those failure sets early on when contractile force is really high and I'm going to fail at 8, bad move. But it's day and night where it's done in the workout. And it's also day and night when it comes down to that risk of injury. So I would lower those reps big time.
Yeah, because the blood flow, my program, that's the 30, 15, 15, and then go to your traditional 8 to 12 for the traditional lifting. I'm totally there with you.
I think, other than the deloads, usually deloads every 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the program. I like that there is a window versus every time, because that allows, let me rephrase it. It allows the person who is giving themselves honest and accurate feedback to have that flexibility. If you're using a window and it's, I've got a vacation coming up, so I'm going to push a little further, bad idea. So some people do work better with black and white cruise or deload weeks, because then okay, I've got 2 more weeks of really hard training. I'm going to make sure that I grind, and there's going to be that kind of psychological setup where if you have that window, some people will leave themselves open and go, okay, I've got this coming up, or I can get another week out of it. It's not milking the cruise, milking the blast phase that we're after. You don't need to milk it. You just need to hit it hard. If you're building your volume, great. If you're building your intensity, great. But realize and honestly assess that feedback and go, okay, I need to deload next week, or I cruise / deload. They're the same thing. It's just a different moniker depending on whether you have a DC programmed brain, because cruise sticks with us, with the old heads, because that's what we always know. But deload is the same thing. The only other reason I say that cruise can sometimes be confusing is I have had clients where I have talked about cruising and they think I'm talking about gear. So to use the cruise moniker or label, you do need to
cruise.
Do need to stipulate it specifically what that cruise is.
And I would say 12 weeks is the maximum to go without I'm impressed if you're making it 12 weeks. I would challenge you. Are you really training as hard as you think you are?
Where I was going to go as well. I agree. If you get to 12 weeks, or if you're past 12 weeks, there's times where you'll get those clients. I'm sure you've had them where they just refuse to take a cruise week. They are so convinced that that is somehow quitting or training. They're not the alpha male anymore. They've turned in their man card, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, I can keep going. It's not about whether you can. We all can. We know that. It's whether you should or whether it's beneficial in the big picture. 2 steps forward or 3 or 5, however you want to. You know, is it 100% intensity or is it 110? You know, that type of thing. Go until you realize and honestly can assess that feedback and pull back when you need to, because this is a big picture game.
Yes. Love it.
We miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty darn comprehensive.
Prehab Rehab Rodeo Round-Up. Woohoo!
That's never going to get old.
No, but it is going to get cringy for the viewers.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And part of me kind of likes that. I don't know. What do we have? What's on? What's on store?
So today we're going to have a discussion about the difference between tendon pain and muscle pain, i.e. is it a tendon issue or did you strain a muscle? Because there's a lot of confusion coming into my office. So, and then when it is a tendon issue, certain tendons you could still keep training and other ones you might have to shut it down. So when I have to diagnose somebody with a tendinopathy, which is not inflammation of the tendon, but actual degeneration happening, I always pray it's 2 specific types, because I could go, look, you could keep training. It might be painful, but it ain't going to make it worse. When the 3 most common for lifters, typically you might have to shut them down, if not grossly modify, which is never fun to hear. So I always hope for that. But let's talk some differences. So typically, you know, tendon pain is going to start slowly, right? So the word is insidious. It just, you know, felt a little something in my shoulder. I'm pressing, didn't think much of it. Then I wake up the next day. Yeah, it's a little tender, right? Meanwhile, a muscle strain, if you strain a muscle, the pain's going to happen right away. It's not this slow, gradual, I don't know when this started, what happened. It's pretty much right away. Then say we're to stick with the shoulder, since you can see me on screen. Tendon pain is usually near or where the tendon's attaching to the bone, whereas muscle strains typically are more in the muscle belly. So, if I had a bicep tendinopathy, long head of a bicep, which is super common in lifters we've talked about, you're typically going to have pain up here, and then usually a really tender spot here. Why? Yes, it's degeneration of the tendon, but there is some inflammatory stuff happening, but there's going to be a buildup of fluid. That's going to travel down your upper arm, your humerus, down the groove where the bicep tendon is, and it pools here. So that's why you typically have tendon pain up higher, where a muscle strain is usually kind of lower in the muscle belly. Tendons get worse with explosive movements, right? So jumping, throwing, sprinting, stuff like that. Well, muscle strains hurt if you just merely try to stretch and squeeze it, right? Sometimes you could actually palpate, it might be hot to touch, especially with a shoulder. It might feel boggy is the term that we use. It could be thick or swollen. And then tendons have a warm-up effect, meaning, and then muscles might just feel weak or they might feel bruised is what a lot of people will say. It feels like I have a bruise deep in the muscle. And then tendons have a warm-up effect, meaning your shoulder hurts like hell during the warm-up sets. And then like halfway through your workout, you're like, it's not that bad, right? Tendons have a warm-up effect. As they get warmer, they feel better. And then when they cool down, they suck. A muscle strain will get worse with activity. It does not have a warm-up effect. It gets worse, worse, worse. So that minor pain rep 1 is going to be significant pain rep 2. And then typically tendon pain lasts a long time. It comes and goes. Why? Because people aren't rehabbing it. Right, because tendons require load to heal, muscle requires rest. So let me say that one more time. You have to load an injured tendon, like not a tear, but like a tendinopathy. You need to rest a muscle. And usually muscle strains get better in a few days. Usually muscle strains, you're going to have bruising. Not always, but usually. Usually you felt and maybe even heard the tear, right? It's not going to be like, I kind of don't know. I did have a kid come in where he did have both a tendon injury and a muscle injury, but it was during a rugby match where the adrenaline was high, right? So He didn't really register it. It was his first match ever too, so he was all excited, right? He finally turned 18, so he'd been practicing with the team for 6 months. So like, yeah, that's that time. Now, certain tendon issues, you could keep training like I talked about. Those are going to be your Achilles tendinopathy and your gluteal tendinopathy, especially your hip abductors, right? So when I have patients with that, I go, look, it's going to be a load management thing. Well, tendon issues are always a load management thing, but I mean, like, it's going to be a pain management thing. There's always going to be discomfort when you rehab a tendon issue. You've got to come to terms with that. But usually Achilles and glutes, I don't need to have them shut it down unless they are just in so much pain and they're refusing to do any modification or whatever. The ones that typically get worse and can actually worsen them structurally, patella or quad. So I hate it when I have a lifter coming in with quad tendonitis. Rotator cuff, especially supraspinatus, which is the most common rotator cuff tendinopathy, tennis elbow, and bicipital. So unfortunately for shoulders, yeah, you're going to be modifying pretty much from day one. We're going to be real mindful of range of motion. I've talked about not letting, if you're doing pressing, don't let the shoulder roll forward. Mm-hmm. You probably might even be doing the one time I actually am a proponent of dumbbell crush presses is when you have a tendon issue in your shoulder because it's keeping your elbows closer. You're putting less strain on there. So those are really important to think. And then again, what does most people do when they have tendon pain? They go to their doc, they get a cortisone shot, it feels better, so they do nothing and they just take NSAIDs and they ice it and they rest. That is the single worst thing you could do to a tendon. So if we do not load a tendon, while you're not broken, you're not fragile, I am going to do a little bit of fear mongering, not from a sales standpoint, but because people need to know this. Cells will start to die off in your tendon if you have long-term tendinopathy and you're not loading it to get better. You got your cortisone shot, it feels better, so you do no rehab. Those cells are never coming back. Ooh. And then you might have nerve fibers start to infiltrate a tendon. A healthy tendon doesn't have nerve fibers. That's why people get in this vicious cycle of every 6 to 7 months, my left shoulder kills for 2 or 3 months, and then it gets better, and then it kills for 2 or 3 months, and then it gets better. And you only get so many cortisone shots per your lifetime of your joint. For most part, it's 3. Above 3, it'll actually start to degenerate the joint itself. So if you get cortisone, you're getting cortisone to then rehab the hell out of what caused the issue. But most people don't want to do that.
All right. Good information. I got a question though.
Yep.
Rotator cuff pain, in my experience, feels more, based on what you explained, like a tendon issue. But the rotator cuffs are muscles. So,
but you're having where the tendon's attached. Yeah, where the tendon is attaching is inflamed. So a tendinopathy is where the tendon's meeting the bone. That is getting inflamed, and kind of inflamed, but it's starting to degenerate. Right, you're starting to get infiltration. There's water in the tendon from inflammation, but it's not a huge inflammatory response. But it is actual degeneration and cells starting to die off, and then that tendon becomes more brittle, and then you're setting yourself up for a host of problems. And it's the common theme of, for 5 years, I've had a shoulder that just kills me out of nowhere, and then it gets better. And they're just getting lucky that their body is catching up. And usually it's a huge spike in training volume, right? You took 6 months off, and then you try to go back to where you were. That's why when I finally get back to go to the gym next Saturday, I'm maybe doing 1, maybe 2 working sets per muscle group, and that is the whole workout. That is it, because I've done nothing, right? I got to be so damn careful. So we know if you spike your training volume by more than 15% from 1 week to the next, your injury risk goes up 7-fold.
Oh, no kidding.
That's a pretty big number.
Okay. When you say intensity, do you mean total load on the muscle? Because I mean intensity, let's just say you're doing drop sets.
I'm saying 15% volume. Like if you have a training spike volume of more than 15% 1 week to the next, your injury risk goes up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot lower than it's a lot lower than people would think. A lot lower than what you would think. Yep.
So just to make sure that I understand correctly,
Mm-hmm.
If there is a rotator issue, we're actually not talking then about the muscle. We're talking about the tendon and the
Mm-hmm.
attachment of the rotator cuff muscle.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Will rotator muscles ever, now I just have a bunch of questions, but I'll stop with this one.
Yeah.
Do we ever have a situation where a rotator cuff muscle strains?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That happens commonly.
Oh, okay. It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yep. And then when there's typically tendinopathy going, there's a bunch of trigger points in the muscle belly. So how I feel it is, I'll feel it. It's super sensitive where it attaches. It feels inflamed. I'll feel the other side. It feels different. I put them through the orthopedic test. You load it. Oh, that hurts like hell. But then when I'm feeling the muscle belly, the best way I could describe it is it feels like there's a mix of guitar strings and Nerds candy all spread out through that muscle belly. And I go, oh, that's really irritated. You treat that, right? Yes, I'm treating where the tendon attaches, but I'm also treating the muscle belly. And it's amazing that you can help. So you don't want to only treat the muscle belly. You don't want to only treat the tendon. You want to treat everything. And then you're finding those trigger points.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question. And then I will stop, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time where you get feedback from a client or patient that they have, let's just use the biceps as an example. They have a popping or a clicking sensation.
Yeah, so that'll increase because of the extra fluid from the little bit of inflammatory response. So you get extra Rice Krispies when you have an irritated area. And then what's going to happen? Your body knows there's an injury there. Our ancestors didn't have doctors. So then what usually happens is the body tries to create a sling. So then all the muscles around the shoulder blade start to tighten up, which makes it harder for the shoulder to move naturally. You've already got the tendon. You can see how it kind of spirals. So usually when somebody comes in with a rotator or a bicep tendon issue, I'm also having to work on releasing the trap, the levator, the rhomboids, the subscap, because their body's creating this defense mechanism, and that's what hurts like hell. That's when people will come in and, oh, I could barely lift my arm here. I treat the whole thing. They could go up to here and they're like, what the hell? And I look like a wizard. Well, I got the defense mechanism down, and I also helped change their brain's perception of everything, so now they can move the shoulder blade freely.
Okay, fair enough. Let's transition to Skip's cheat meal review. We have a different topic. We're starting a new, it's the same, I guess, topic, cheat meal review, but we have a different class of, we did burgers.
Yep.
We did cookies. What are we going to do now? Cinnamon rolls.
Ooh.
I know, right? Even if you go, I'm not a big cinnamon roll fan. Maybe you just haven't had really good cinnamon rolls. I don't know. Here's the thing. I did the top 5 list for the burgers. I did the top 5 list for cookies. I could have gone even deeper than that. I could have gone the top 20 for that matter. Cinnamon rolls a little bit more limiting. So I'm going to go with the top 3. I'm going to give away one because they're just, look, if you go with number 3 and you never get to try number 2 or number 1, trust me, you won't be, I want to say you won't be missing out, but you won't feel like you're missing out because all 3 are great. Number 3, you'll see it on the screen. And listen, when it comes to visuals, I can almost see a good burger from a picture. I can look at it and I go, and a lot of us, I think, can based on our preferences. Like if I see a burger with thick patty and this month, I'm like, yeah, that's not my jam. So I think a lot of us kind of do that. There is no one who will look at this picture and say, yeah, that just doesn't look good.
That's food porn 101.
Exactly. Now, this is the Hive out of New York, and I have touched on Gold Belly before because Gold Belly, if you don't know, is the website where you can order gourmet foods of like pretty much anything. And I use this as an example because it's so good. New Yorkers will know this. Cat's Deli.
Yep.
If you're a pastrami guy, you can get Cat's Deli pastrami delivered anywhere in the United States to your front door. You're going to pay for it, but it's not as expensive as you would think. And how bad do you want it? I mean, it's kind of like Uber Eats. You can't go get it. You don't want to go get it, but how bad do you want it? So if you're willing to pay for it, it can be at your front door. Same thing with these cinnamon rolls. Here's the one negative, but it's not as bad of a negative as I thought after I just bitch, pissed, and moaned and like, oh, I just don't want to do this. I can't. You have to make them yourself. And when I say make them yourself, they come pre-packaged. Like the cinnamon rolls are ready to be cooked, but you do have to prep them just a little bit, and you do have to put them in your oven. It's kind of like ordering a no-bake pizza, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. And most of us are like, that's such a laborious task. I just don't want to do that. I want it delivered, and then I just want to eat it. I'm with you. I'm that guy too. But believe me when I say, number one, they can't send them already cooked.
Yep.
So if you want them, you got to cook them. It is not a short process. It literally will take from the time that you have to be aware of what's going on. You can freeze these, no problem. But when you take them out of the freezer, you got to let them set for, 10 hours or a day. So you're better off putting them in the fridge, taking them out of the fridge. You still have to let them set for a couple hours, but you have to let them set in the oven. There's instructions. They're very simple instructions, but it's about 20 minutes in the oven to set. Then it's about another 25 to cook. And of course, here's the cool thing. They send you tubs of frosting. You're not going to come up. How many times do you come up short on? You go, man, I just wish there was more frosting on it. No, I made the mistake of putting like half or 2/3 of the frosting on there. And I thought I was going to make myself sick. And I'm all about sweets at that point. Because I was very depleted, that sort of thing. So they are to die for, but you have to cook them. So that's number 3. I'll give away, I'm not going to say what they are or who they are or anything else about them, but I will say that number 1, you don't have to cook. And number 1 and number 2, you don't have to cook. But here's the catch. Number 1 and number 2 can't be delivered through Gold Belly. You actually have to go there. It's a little limiting. But I didn't want to give away, middle of the road cinnamon rolls, so I decided to do it this way. Number 3, cook them. They're freaking awesome. Number 1 and number 2, you got to be where they are or you can't get them.
Yeah, I need to spend some time on Gold Belly.
Be careful.
Yep.
You're better off checking it out when you're not hungry and you're not depleted. Because otherwise you will order until you're at one point during the end of prep, and this is almost embarrassing. I had ordered, and I'd lost track of it. I had ordered from 7 different cookie companies. Finally, my wife is like, how many more orders are going to show up at the front? I'm just like, 2 more. That's it. I swear. I mean, I was having her take them to work to give them to staff, things like that. It just got out of control. Why? Because I was depleted. And every cookie I looked at was really, really good. And then I got them and some of them weren't. So there's that. I'm trying to provide a service here to save people time, save people money, because sometimes something will look good in a picture or they will sell it very well. And then you get it and you look at it, you go, that's not what was in the picture. This isn't right. Yeah. And it doesn't work. All right, Q&A time. We got some questions.
Yep. So this is from Nadia Hassan 6228. She agreed dumbbell kickbacks do suck. Very home workout. Kudos. I'd love to hear you two discuss hip thrusts sometime. Do you do them, Skip? Let's start with that.
Okay. First, let's clarify the terminology. Okay.
Thank you.
Because really, it's as an industry, we conflate the terms and the labels. So correct me if I'm wrong, or this isn't how you look at it based on the term, but I see this as like the old school version is your shoulders are on the side of a bench. You basically, I'm not going to say it, but you basically sky the barbell. Yeah, you see, I did that.
Yeah.
YouTube can't get me for that.
Nope. Well,
the algorithm just went, what did he say? I need to know what he said. I think we're supposed to knock him down for that. I didn't say anything, but everybody got what I was saying. So, yeah, you're putting I can say vajayjay. You're putting your vajayjay in the air. That's about the only one I think I can get away with. Picha. That, and I get that from, no one's going to get that reference, but my kids growing up, I had 3 girls and a boy, and that was the kid term that came up. My
That's
pizza
awesome.
hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to clean that better. I don't know
Yeah.
what to tell you. You
Yeah.
got to drink some cranberry juice. I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah. Talk to
that
mom.
is how I see the hip thrust. Obviously, there's machines and everything else. Are we on the same page? But
Yeah, and then glute bridge is your shoulders are on the floor, because
There you
people get confused. And for what it's worth, there was one study done this year that compared them head to head, a hip thrust and a glute bridge.
Okay.
Not for hypertrophy, but they were doing it on adolescent soccer players, and they found that both of them helped with sprint speeds. So glute bridge and hip thrust for sprinting from a performance standpoint are probably pretty interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so-
I program hip thrusts in my athlete programs for sports that involve sprinting, or they are combat sports because they involve somebody mounting them and you got to get somebody off. So I use them in athlete programs for sprint and explosive requirements, right? Because they actually will translate to sprinting better than squats or deadlifts.
Okay, and I can see that. But let me ask you this: based on your experience in your profession
Mm-hmm.
and your experience in the gym, don't you see the hip thrust as just vastly superior to the glute? To me, there's just this massive change or disparity in range of motion.
Yeah, I typically do hip thrusts over glute bridges. If you are going to do a glute bridge, it's on the screen right now. A cool hack is you set up a Bosu ball between the wall and yourself, so your shoulders and necks are lying against the Bosu ball, and it prevents you from sliding across the floor. So there's a gem right there if you like your hip thrusts. I mean, your glute bridges. I use both for hip flexor issues. So you know what? Let me share the screen real
Yeah,
quick.
because I'm wondering what is the benefit of doing this is a better way, I guess, to ask my question. What's the added benefit of doing them from the floor? A glute.
It's easier to
thrust.
set up. You don't need
Okay.
as much equipment. Yeah.
But far less beneficial? No?
Yeah, because they've never been compared They've never compared head to head for hypertrophy. The only study was sprinting speed that
Okay.
compared them head to head. Now
Okay.
they have similar EMG studies and separate studies. I just think hip thrust you could load it a little bit easier. You're not dealing with sliding across the floor. Typically there's less neck pain because your neck's not in a weird position. Glute bridges, we'll just call them hip thrusts for now, right? It's prioritizing your glute max. So that's the highest glute max activation. You have moderate glute med activation and very minimal glute minor activation. Now, if you do these one leg at a time, that'll increase some stability demands and get those in. But what people don't realize is the glute max, different parts act differently. So extension typically comes from the lower glute fibers, and these very low fibers, pure, like full hip extension, it will actually adduct AD go towards the midline. So these lower fibers, as you extend super far back because the hip has to internally rotate to get into hip extension, will actually adduct the hips. Then your upper fibers do more of the abduction external rotation. So people don't realize the glute acts a little bit differently. Now, what people also don't realize, this is in direct relationship with your hip flexors. It's almost like a bicep and a tricep. And what does everybody do for hip flexors? All they want to do is stretch them or dig into them. They never want to train them. And what's showing on the screen now is one of my rugby guys, South African badass rugby player, horrific front of the hip pain. We're using this glute bridge, body weight only, to fire his glute, which is going to relax his hip flexor via reciprocal inhibition. So when you get into the glute, the hip flexor will start to relax. So I use them for sprint speed in athletes. I use them for anybody with hip flexor pain. And then if you really want, very well developed glutes, I think they're great. There was a study that compared hip thrust to barbell squats, and that broke the internet when that came out a couple of years ago, where they found both had similar hypertrophy in the glutes. Obviously, the squats got more adductors quads, and people were like, "Oh, you only need to do hip thrusts." I'm like, "Oh God, why don't we take it to the extreme?" Hip thrust is a shortened position movement for the glute. A squat is a mid-range position movement for the glute. Why don't we do all of them?
Now,
Mic drop.
is it safe to say though We really could throw the glute bridge in the trash compared to the hip.
Especially with booty bands, because if when you do booty bands on a glute bridge or a hip thrust, you're actually limiting pure hip external rotation. So you feel it firing more. Why? Because now you're trying to recruit your glute med and minimus. This is not the purpose of that. So when you do the booty bands and you're pressing your knees out, you're going to limit pure hip extension, which means you are not getting the maximal glute max activation. And we know that in the top position of a hip thrust, you have higher upper fiber glute max activation than in a squat. So like you're taking away the whole point, which is to get your glute in a fully shortened position.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is an incredible movement for the wellness division because they're training glutes usually 3 times a week, and it's not creating a lot of systemic fatigue. It's a shortened position movement. You're not creating as much mechanical tension, mechanical damage. So you could really hip thrust 2-3 times a week, right?
Right.
Can you really squat with a ton of intensity 2-3 times a week?
But they
For
are
a period
also,
of time.
that's the other part too, is they're not just doing hip thrust. The
Correct.
hip thrust is getting all this attention in the wellness division. Like, oh, that's why their glutes are so big.
They're doing a lot of stuff.
They're doing a lot of, that's
because
one
they,
of 5
they
movements.
have to get those upper fibers with the hip abduction, right? They
Right.
have to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then like when people have a history of chronic low back pain, typically their glutes, they have a hard time recruiting them, where I put them face down. They're lying face down. They bend their knee 90 degrees. They lift that leg off the table. I push down on the foot. Do you feel it in your glute and your hamstring? 9 times out of 10, people with chronic low back pain feel their hamstring trying to do hip extension, not the glute. And I want the glute to be the one that fires first, because it's supposed to fire glute, then hamstring, right? So that's a common theme. So while it's not traditionally thought of core, your glutes are a huge stabilizer of the low back. They're a huge part of core stability. When people have a hot low back, 100% of the time I find a gnarly trigger point on both glutes. I typically hit it with a needle. It's unpleasant going in, but if I could get that to relax, because I hook that needle that's 3 to 5 inches into their glute, I hook that up to a TENS unit, so the whole needle's electrified, and I use various frequencies to do various things in the muscle.
Well, wait, 3 to 5
inches.
inches
into the glute. Yes.
Yeah, I think unpleasant would be a gross misunderstatement.
And then there's a huge performance standpoint. So all my powerlifters come in the week of their meets and they say they're stronger. I hit both sides. I've had to order special harpoons, I call them.
Yeah.
Because their glutes are so dense that my Gen Pop ones, I literally can't get through their glute. So I literally have a special box for my big time strongmen, powerlifters, bodybuilders.
Okay, so which one would be worse then? Because it's so deep. Which one is more uncomfortable? Manually getting to that deep trigger point or the needle?
I think manual.
It would almost have to be. Yeah.
Like in the armpit, it sounds crazy to stick a needle in your subscap. I would choose that over the pin and stretch.
Yep.
7 days a week, twice on Sundays. Usually I give patients the option, and usually I go, they get freaked out by the needle, so I do manual, and then they come in the next time, they go, can we try the needle? And I do the needle, and they go, we're going to do that from now on. Yeah, I literally have my shoulder hurt. Wait, no, my shoulder doesn't hurt because you are not sticking your thumb in my arm.
Right, yeah, they don't come back. Yep. That's funny. Here's the only thing that I have to say about because this is how my brain.
Yeah,
I'm just really struggling. I said misunderstatement. Is English your first
language?
Yeah, I said gross misunderstatement.
Don't worry, that was me last week. I swear to God, I was an ESL kid last week.
That's good. That's good. No, I see the glute bridge, or compare it, I guess, in my brain to, instead of doing a regular tricep press down, you're doing like only the bottom quarter. Or 1/3 of the movement.
Yeah, because it's a lot more shortened only. Yeah, I like that. And then one thing I didn't mention, a proper hip thrust in my mind, your shin is still vertical at the bottom. Because if your feet are too far away, you're going to get a lot of hamstring, and we're trying to get the glute.
Okay, I like that. Yep. I think that's a good point.
And then push through that big toe knuckle. Because that's and then I'll even put the foot wedges under, especially my bodybuilders who are coming in. And we're using my newbie E-stem to bring up glutes. So we've got 3 female competitors were bringing up their glutes, and one of the big things we're doing with the newbie is the hip thrust, and then they have wedges under their foot based on their unique biomechanics to do the whole foot biomechanic hip thing that we know I'm a big fan of.
Right.
But just make sure you're pressing through the big toe knuckle, and you will feel a world of difference with how it recruits.
Sounds good. On that note, we got to get to getting. Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. If you didn't like the show, pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. Should sound a little something like this. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. I got the outro right. I just screwed up the intro. Dr. Marv, how can someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
Easiest way is Instagram at dr.marvin.saysvc. My office is Coastal Performance Chiropractic. The website is almost finally being revamped. And then theeducatedmeathead.com.
Fair enough. You want to look like you have no skin? I'm your guy. Go to teamskip.com and you'll find all of my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind, this is a team of 3, not just 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for the visuals and the graphics, and he also plays a huge role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between
Two
Dumbbells.
Dumbbells.